Hello, Ben.
Hey,
There you are.
how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. I tried calling on another phone, but I kept getting a busy signal, and then couldn't get through. And then it rang, and then it stopped ringing. So I figured I had to try on a different phone.
Well, even heavy metal composers have phone troubles from time to time, I suppose.
Right. Maybe I'll have to write a song about it.
So here we are. You know, this is a great day to be talking about heavy metal because even though, and this is something I'm going to be talking about later, you're kind of an unbelievably positive guy these days. I feel like anyway. You present very positively. Heavy metal.
I try to be.
You try to be, yeah. Even though that is true, heavy metal is kind of like it can be a dark genre. At least it's perceived to be. And today's kind of a dark and cold day.
Yep.
Perfect day for metal.
Perfect day for metal. This is exactly you look outside and you go, oh, great, inspiration.
That's perfect. So I'm really excited to talk to you, Ben. We talked to you on the year anniversary of your first record, The Reckoning.
Yeah.
Incredible album. And yeah, incredible. And you know what? I show that record as an example to people, to young people who want to get into metal in Peterborough. Peterborough isn't a huge metal community right now. Heavy metal happens in waves in communities, and right now there's a few bands that are, happening here and there, but it's not a huge push. But you really had the motivation to do it and make it happen, and it's an incredible record.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, of course. So last time we talked to you, you were already actually starting work on this record that comes out on November 4th, Worship the Ancient, right? Worship the Ancient, and you had already started working on it. You've been working on this record for a long time. This is something you started as soon as your last record came out, I believe.
Yeah, The Reckoning came out in October of 2014, and then I immediately got going into kind of the preliminary writing phase of Worship the Ancient in November of 2014. So less than a month before I started writing again, because for me, The Reckoning was like a big experiment, and I talked about it last time where I didn't have a lot of time to put the songs together, but I got lucky and the songs came out really, really well. So I wanted to give myself as much time to work on this album as possible. That way, when it gets released, it sets the bar even higher than The Reckoning did.
Well, that's a refreshing thing to hear. When you're making a record, I think when musicians are making a record as a band, like you're not a band, you're a dude, right? So
yeah, it's just me.
So you're thinking about bringing together aspects of something and making a product, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about because they start as a unit, a group, probably live performance, and the record is kind of an afterthought. It's like a product of the band, but for you, it was almost a primary thing. Yeah,
it's I do all this time was a little bit different than The Reckoning in the fact that I really had a good kind of team that I was working with. Like, first of all, I worked with Harley again. He's the one that did all the recording at Acrylic Recordings because he's just amazing. But I knew, The Reckoning, when it originally released, was instrumental. And I wanted Worship the Ancient will be released both instrumentally and vocally on the exact same day. But I really focused my songwriting as if it was going to be a vocal version. So I got together with Logan again. So he's going to be he's the vocalist on this album again, just like he was in The Reckoning.
And sorry, who is Logan?
Logan Adams. He's from the States actually, and he plays in a band called Eternal Void. Really, really great band. So he was on The Reckoning as well. He was also the vocalist that was on there. And I worked with a friend of mine, David, who helped me with kind of the lyrical component of the writing for this album.
Right. Now, before we get into sort of the heart of this record, I know a little bit about it from talking with you before. I wanted to talk about your creation process for doing this. So while you were writing this record and working very seriously, it's obvious you spent a long time. These are thoughtful songs. You had a lot of collaborators that you worked closely with. You were also finishing your, are you a history major? Was that Is that right?
Yep.
History? You were finishing your history degree at Trent University, and this was like you were in your 4th year. Like, that's a lot of work, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. It was, you know what, it also helped me get down to the grind of writing the album, you know, because it gave me the break from schoolwork that I needed as well. So a lot of times it was like, okay, I'm done studying. I need to write, you know. So I think school in a big way actually helped me with my own songwriting process and just allowing me to set aside break times for myself, you know.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that that's an incredible thing to do. You know, school is a stressful thing. And I think that there are other people who use music as an outlet. And I think it's really nice to see someone using music as an outlet that's going to, like, that there's a next step. You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to make a record. I'm going to make a record out of these, like, out of these catharsis sessions.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly it.
So let's talk about the record a little bit. I don't want to talk too much, even though I like talking to you, Ben. I don't want to talk too much. I want to talk a little bit about the record, and then I want to let the music speak for itself after that. But one thing that's really interesting to me, this is I know you've talked about how mythology is very interesting to you, and the idea of this record was you were doing the Sumerian take on Noah's Ark.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So listening to the Mount of Salvation, you're right. Like, it's an interesting choice, right? It's an interesting choice because these are, like, living in Canada. Like, most people are very familiar with these very common Old Testament Christian tales, right?
Yeah.
And so listening to it, it's like I'm hearing it, and I'm hearing you're really riding this line of the Christian mythos, and there's these hints towards a different story, that this is coming from a different place in these subtly brutal descriptions of, like, the creator.
Yeah.
Although the Jewish, like, the Old Testament God is arguably also, like, a very harsh God. This is like even more. There's a lot of darkness here.
Well, the thing is, the difference is between, like, Old Testament God and New Testament God and these old gods is that these Old Testament God is very, very malicious in his intent. Sometimes he was very cruel. The stories say that he was very cruel, but he was still infallible. Where these Elil, kind of the main god in my story here, he's very capricious in nature. He's very human-like in nature, and that's how old gods were perceived. They didn't give off an aura of, I'm perfect. You know, they gave off an aura of, I'm going to do what I want because I can.
Right.
You know, and I think that very much along the lines of the Greek gods. They're very human in their appetites.
Now, I can't help but think, like, in the specific choice, this is like choosing a mythos that most people would understand. Like, how does faith or belief or the lack of play into this record, into this story?
For me, I really wanted to stay away. Like, I have done more political belief songs. Like, Belief, for example, was a very one that came from my own, I guess, religious viewpoint or lack thereof. But I really wanted to tell a religious story without having there be a huge religious element, if that makes sense. I just wanted to tell the story and take the perspective of a character. You know, this isn't a criticism on the Sumerian beliefs. This isn't a criticism on any of that. It's just more, okay, well, this supposedly happened in this mythology, in this story. If I were this character, so the two characters here are Elil, the god, and Atrahasis, the man that this is all happening. He's the Noah figure. And basically throughout the album, I take both the perspective of Elil and Atrahasis. And, you know, I try and bring their conflict into how would it feel, what would it look like, that kind of stuff. So it's just more of I wanted to dissect the relationship between the two characters rather than religion as a whole.
It is also, it's an amazing story. It's like a story, very cool.
What I like about it is that it's familiar. so people look at it and go, is this Noah's Ark? So there's some sort of familiarity to it, but if you dig deeper into it and you listen to the actual lyrics and you hear the names that are being called out and the questions that are being posed and that kind of stuff, you start to realize that this is a different character, this is a different story, which I think will, for people, like metalheads are usually pretty interested in that kind of stuff, so I think a lot of them, when they go, oh, is this Noah's Ark, and realize, no, it's not, it's going to drive them to do a little bit of research and figure out, okay, who is this character,
Right on, yeah.
This is the first, like, with The Reckoning, each song had its individual story, conclusion, that was it. And this one is, the album is the story. It literally follows from song 1 to song 9. And, like, you can listen to the songs individually, but to get the full story, like, you really have to start at song number 1 and at song number 9.
Right. Now, this is really interesting to me. You're talking about these stories, because these are definitely obviously like on your sleeve, playing into your interests as someone who did a degree in history, has a vested interest in stories themselves. Obviously, this is something that you're bringing your interests out and you're applying them to your art. Now, The Reckoning was an emotional record, and I mean, like, from your statements and listening to the record, you can feel that's what it is. And
absolutely.
Worship the Ancient, as you said, is like these character sketches and following the story through their eyes. Now, but beyond the coolness of this story that we've been talking about, what's the connection between you and these characters? Like, how do you invest emotionally into that?
Well, I did a lot of reading. Like I said, I did. The Reckoning came out in October. I started writing this in November, but that month in between, I was literally just doing research, and throughout the lyrical discussion that I had with David, both he and I bounced ideas back and forth on how do we take this story and make it ours and that kind of stuff. So over the time of just reading these stories over and over from different authors and different perspectives and that stuff, you really start to build a connection naturally with, okay, why would you do that? Why would you say that thing? How would you react from here? And really, it wasn't so much me connecting with Atrahasis or O'Leal. It was me trying to put myself in their own position. So it's me trying to connect with myself in a different position. If I were Atrahasis, how would I react?
Right.
If I were O'Leal, how would I go about wiping him out? And it wasn't. I don't mean to say that I think I'm a god or I think I'm Atrahasis. It was just a way that I could easily bring myself into their shoes, and just how would I deal with this situation and still remain pretty true to the story itself, So yeah, I think the way that I connected with these characters is that I made myself these characters, where it, much like an actor would go to a movie, or act in a film, they kind of become that character, and then off screen they can walk away. The Reckoning, there was no walking away for me. It was me at my emotional center, where Worship is more me putting on an act and then being able to leave that. But I can still get very into that act.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think it's a really cool step thematically as a record. I can't wait to hear it now. I'm hearing it for the first time as well. Listeners, like that, with everyone, I'll be hearing it for the first time.
Yeah,
so
I'm super nervous to hear what everybody thinks, because it's still it's really heavy. It's definitely as heavy, if not more heavy than The Reckoning, and I love it more than I love The Reckoning. As much as I love The Reckoning, that will always have a place in my heart. Worship just allowed me to reach a different kind of artistic side of myself, which was that how do I tell this story rather than how do I deal with the crap that's happening to me right now,
Right.
And I'd much rather tell somebody else's story than have to tell my own.
Sure. Well, that's great. It's growth, and it's interesting. And speaking of which, speaking of growth, after graduating from university. You moved back. You're in Bradford right now, and
Yes.
I know that you were recently nominated for a Young Entrepreneur Award for your guitar teaching business.
Yes.
Okay. And so following your social media presence, I try to keep tabs on everyone who has a connection to Trent University or Peterborough who's dealing in art and music. And I would say that this nomination came from this tremendous impact that you make on the people that you're around. And you're going to have to like listen to me toot your horn for a little bit here.
Well, if I don't mind.
All right. So having been a guitar student myself as a young man, I totally understand how far like a positive and encouraging attitude can move people to grow in their instrument and in general. And going alongside this, I've also noticed in photos of you meeting with your heavy metal heroes, which I know that you attend heavy metal concerts as most people who have a genre interest do.
Yeah, I'm going to one on Sunday. So.
Well, who are you going to see?
Meshuggah.
Hey! Oh my God!
Yeah.
Are you going to meet them?
If I die after the show, know that I die happy.
Oh, cow. See, now what I'm picturing now, because I've seen some other pictures, I'm picturing you with your arms around these Meshuggah guys, and they all got heavy metal grimaces on, and you've got this beaming smile on your face, and this is the picture. And I got some other heavy metal buddies, and I've been a heavy metal guy myself, and when people are getting these group photos, people are like flexing the bicep, everyone's grimacing. You don't do that.
They're throwing the horns up.
Yeah, you're the smiling Ben, amongst the heavy metal guys.
I don't, as much as metal can sometimes run into the problem of being cliche.
Yeah.
And being very, okay, let's all wear black today, boys. It's, I've never been about that. I think music, if your music can't speak for itself, you're not doing a good enough job. And so for me, it just makes me happy. Music makes me so happy. Even when it's dealing with tough, emotional times, it does make me happy in the end. So, you'll always see those pictures where I'm grinning ear to ear because that's where I'm happiest. I don't care about the image of some metal bands that they try and portray. I'll show up in a bright pink shirt that says death metal on it with a rainbow. I don't care. It's anything that will allow me to have fun, enjoy myself. That's worth it in itself. I don't need to put on an act for that.
Well, Ben, on that note, let's let your music speak for itself. Let's get into it. It's been great to talk to you again.
Thank you so much.
I'm really looking forward to hearing this record. If you want to find Ben's records, you can find them on Bandcamp, I believe. Is it Ben Simon at bandcamp.com?
Yep, Bandcamp, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, any online store you can think of. It'll be there on November 4th.
All right, so November 4th is the release date. And for now, we've got to listen to the whole record, tracks 1 to 9. And we'll talk to you in the future for your third album. Okay, Ben?
Absolutely. You have a good one.
All right, you too, man.
Thank you.
All right, well, that was Ben Simon. And we are going to start with Elil's Wrath from his sophomore effort, Worship the Ancient. You're listening to Trent Radio 92.7 FM. I've been Matt Jarvis, and enjoy the record. All right.